So hello, and welcome to today's live stream, where we are up to S. Little update on other progress. New firmware should be out in the very, very, very near future on the today/tomorrow kind of vibe. Yeah, we've just been finishing off this website that lets you capture pedals. Capture amps and pedals, I guess. Capture amps for the NAMM amp module. So that guides you through the process and then exports the files in the right format for Beebo. So you can have all the pretties, the picture of the amp and the descriptions and the controls and stuff. All of that set up. So if you've got an existing file for NAMM, you can format them all in the correct way for Beebo, just giving them the right metadata and put them on the pedal. So yeah, I've got all the importing done now, and I've got the website thing working. Just needs a little bit more testing and a little bit more polishing, and then it should be good to go. Hopefully, if all's going smoothly today/tomorrow for the next round of testing. There will be some other little updates, hopefully, in that update as well. So yeah, there should be some extra little things. So that's the general gist of what's coming up as far as firmware. There are some other bigger changes coming up in the near future once that big module, neural amp modeler, is all functional for people. Mostly around the training stuff. That's the bit that's been taking a while. The actual module on the pedals, fine. All right. So the modules we'll be showing this week is, we're up to S, and the first one is sample and hold. And you can see I've set up a basic patch here. So what sample and hold does is it grabs a single instant of a CV value. So if I've got two different LFOs here. One of them's going quite slowly, 58 BPM or something. Well, not that slowly, but the other one's going at 128. So, and you'll see, if I go here and this one's connected up to the main input on the sample and hold, and this one is connected up to the gate. So whenever the sample and hold is triggered, it will sample every time this one, every time it gets triggered, it will sample its input. You can do some interesting things with this, but the way it's working here is that if, I'll show you how this sounds. So if we have an LFO going into a macro oscillator into the pitch, we'll just get, I'll actually show that. Disconnect the input there. So if we connect this LFO directly to pitch, volt per octave, and turn our volume up a little bit. You see that we're getting that continuous sliding note. So it's not jumping to particular values, it's going in a continuous pitch. You're getting all of the fretless kind of bits in between. Whereas if we now disconnect this one from the macro oscillator, LFO, and we plug in the sample and holds output into the VCA, and now turn this up. you'll see, you hear that it's only changing the value each time it's getting a trigger. So even though this isn't getting triggered or anything, it's just going continuously, this one is triggering this sample and hold, and then it's sampling whatever the current value of the LFO is at that instant. So yeah, that's what you can do with a sample and hold. There's more wacky stuff you can do with the sample and holds as well. But that's the basic idea. You can grab values and and hold them. That's the basic gist of sample and hold. So the next one up in S is Saturator. Nonlinear saturation and soft limiting. I use Saturator for quite a few things. It's the basic warmthy thing. It's a bit of a confusing module in a few ways. I'll show you how to use that one. So we'll just run a guitar signal here. I'm running out of 1 and 3, and in from 1. What's levels like? So clean, I sound like that. Didn't actually check how in tune I was before. Yep. So that's clean. Now, if we go into Saturator, we've got two options, post-gain and pre-gain. Which every time I look at this, I realize really should be the opposite way around in this layout. So post-gain is just an overall master volume control. Pre-gain is how much gain is going into the saturator. So if you want more compression and more overdriviness, you turn down the post-gain a bit. If you just want more level, full stop, just turn up the post-gain. But if we I should have that turned off. If you turn down the post-gain, see, just quieter. Now, if I crank up the pre-gain, sorry, I will turn down that. Sorry, I will turn off those notifications. One of them is on my phone, and I should have done that already. And yep, sorry about that. Yes, if you turn down the post gain and up the pre-gain, you'll just get more compression. So if you turn this right up and this down a little bit, you'll get, well, I'll try this-ish. So you get a bit of warmth there. Just trying to make sure I don't get too hot into levels here. You can hear that's getting a little bit crunchy there. Nice, kind of pretty straightforward, a little bit of gaininess. So anytime you feel like you need to have a little bit of saturation. So this gives you quite a lot of compression as well. So if you want a more gentle compressor, this is quite handy. Just tune pre and post gain to taste. Obviously, you know, it's not like the amp modelers, but it's also pretty basic. It's not very gainy there. But yeah, you'll find that it's very CPU efficient and, you know, a little bit interesting. If we give it a little bit of gain from the stage before it. And I'm not running with a cab or anything there. I'm not running with anything. That's just Telecaster through pedal through the Saturator. That's it. Pretty basic, but actually works alright. So that is the Saturator. Nice little versatile, CPU efficient module. Next up in S is the Slew Limiter. Yep. So this is a fun little module. Basically, anytime you want a control voltage to change slower, you can use the Slew Limiter. For instance, if you've got a square wave LFO with sharp, spiky edges on it like that, and you want to round off those edges, the way you can do that is with our friend the Slew Limiter. So it can control both. If we add one, we've got controls for both the attack, the time up, and the kind of decay, the time down. So it'll smooth those edges out for you. This is also kind of interesting with things like foot switches. So if we grab our Slew Limiter, we grab a foot switch under F. It's fine. Grab a foot switch, grab a Slew Limiter, and then we'll grab a VCA. So we'll just run this one, VCA out. I'm running out 1 and 3. And now we'll connect foot switch. Sorry if my fingers are getting in the road, I'll use both hands instead. I grabbed the guitar and now it's getting in the road of the microphone. There you go. And now Slew Limiter to VCA. So I've connected up the value out from the foot switch into the Slew Limiter and then into the VCA. So the this one, these are just the basic parameters. And I might set this to latch, will I? Yeah, I won't actually. I'll set it to not latch to begin with, and I'll just... So you see, strumming, nothing coming through. And it doesn't come on instantaneously, it fades up, and then it fades down. That's because the Slew Limiter is doing its thing. And if I increase the time down and the time up by a bit, we'll see still strumming, coming in, coming out. So yeah, that could be quite nice to fade in or fade out. If you want, a particular part to fade in or out, or say you want to turn off a particular effect, like maybe your reverbs or the delays or something, and instead of it doing suddenly, you can fade them. For delays, maybe you have a VCA with a Slew Limiter on the send into a delay, so you're fading out the actual send into it. But you could have it on the return as well, the input or the output of the delays. So that's a quick example of using the Slew Limiter to smooth things out. Again, that works, of course, with the LFO. Again, because it works on everything that's CV. If we turn this to a punchy square wave LFO, we turn our times down a little bit, and then we strums. Now I've got a lot of different ways to shape our LFOs. So instead of, this is just a square wave going in there, but it doesn't sound like a square wave. It goes whoomp, whoomp, whoomp in and out, and there's no clicking, because we're smoothing those edges off. And that means, yeah, you can have quite, like a very, very flexible LFO very easily, because, you know, you can have the attack and decay parts of your wave shape be different. Very powerful. So, chuck slew limiters where you feel like, you know. And again, if you've got a single LFO going through two different slew limiters, you can get, you know, correlated but different behaviors, and that can be quite interesting. So, yeah, slew limiters. Surprisingly versatile little babies. You can also kind of use, it's a related thing, you can use any audio filter as a slew limiter as well if you've got interconnect mode on turned on, because you know, filters, if you're well, not any audio filter, if you've got a low pass filter, it'll let through slow moving signals, right? Slow moving stuff. So that means basically it'll knock the sharp edges off waves, which is kind of the same thing as slew limiter. Well, you know, it is the same thing as slew limiter does. So you won't have the flexibility of the downtime part and things like that, but yeah, you can use any low pass filter as a slew limiter. Because yeah, it's just filtering, making fast stuff go slow. Where are we up to? Slew limiter. Step sequences and step sequencer Ext. All right, let's have one of them. Step sequences. Draw in your. So remember we had the note. Back in N we had the note version, which sends out actual, which has notes as a thing. This one just has values. So this is for sending out values over time. This is the one with the Ext has an external control. This one has not got an external control. It's got play and reverse in it. The other one has step controls. These are going instantaneously between these values, but if you turn on glide, it's basically like having a slew limiter inside. It slowly moves between the values. So we can connect that up. I can just connect it up to this VCA. If only I had one of them already. There we go. I'll disconnect this thing, and then we can connect up this step sequencer to this VCA. And then, as we go, we'll have bits with more or less gain. Strummy, strum, 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 strum. So yeah, that's just putting out a value. You can run this into anything. It can go backwards, or it can stop. These can be triggered. The stop and start can be triggered externally. Next one, let us. So step sequencer Ext is very much the same, except if you go in there, it doesn't have any controls for go. Instead, if you connect up something like this to it, you can connect it up to step, reset, and back. Now, if we connect this up to step, we'll see that it's stepping each time there's a value from our LFO from our gate or our trigger. So we're triggering that. But if you want to get into much more complicated patterns or more chaotic ones or whatever, you can connect things up together. So we could have it so another LFO, let's duplicate this guy. This LFO might be triggering back, and it might be quite slow, and it doesn't matter actually what waveform we have there. Now, see, you get occasional hops. So that's still going to be at a known pattern because they're LFOs, they're not chaotic, but you could put chaos in there. And now it will just very, randomly have a step back. Or you could connect that up to the reset one to restart the sequence again. So yeah, you can get more complicated patterns by connecting up those. Or cascading them. All right. So what am I doing? Not this one. That one. Step sequencer and step sequencer Ext. What is next on our list in S? Stereo EQ is exactly the same as the mono EQ we did back in M. It's just got stereo in and out. So look back on M for that. Stereo cab, that's mono in, stereo out, so you'll need stereo IRs for that. That's different to the quad. So if we add a stereo cab, we'll see mono in, stereo out. So if you've got something that does that, mono into, stereo out, and is a cab, like an actual stereo cab, which I know some do exist. The Magnetones definitely come in stereos. I think there's some Voxes. I'm pretty sure that are stereo. Other stuff, stereo cabs do exist. If you've got one of them, you can use that. Normally, most 99.95 probably % of cabs in the world are mono. Everyone you've ever seen on stage pretty much is most likely mono. So usually you'll be using a mono cab. If you want to run stereo, you can just run 2 mono cabs. It's totally an acceptable option. But yeah, you might actually have a stereo cab, in which case, because you could be using the cabs for something that isn't necessarily a normal cab, because they're just IRs. You could be loading other stuff in there as well. In that case, it could be a totally valid thing. So that takes in stereo files. So back as we continue to S. Stereo compressor. That one is exactly the same as the mono one as well. Which we covered. It's, nice studio-y kind of compressor. It's much more of a studio-y kind of compressor, like I said back in M, than a kind of pedally kind of sounding compressor. So it's not super aggressive, but it can get a little bit that way. Stereo phaser, same phaser, but in stereo. I really should change how these are organized. Stereo reverb. That's the mono in, stereo out, takes stereo IRs. So that's the one I use 95% of the time if I'm running stereo. Mono in, stereo out. That's the normal. Take all of the files pretty much in Beebo are designed for this one, the stereo reverb. Mono in, stereo out. Sorry, what is? We have a question too. Let me guess. The question is, the pedal next to the Beebo looks complicated and awesome at the same time. Yeah. What do you like most about how they create together? So the pedal next to Beebo is Flat 5, the Josh Smith Flat 5, which is a signature pedal with the amazing artist Josh Smith, who also uses a Beebo. And it is both simple and complicated at the same time, I'd say. The A channel, this one, is just these 4 controls here. That's the only controls it has. It just has a diode selection. And then the B channel has a high pass and a low pass filter, resonant, 4-pole, as its tone stack, and then it's got this amp style JFET based circuit. And it's got these LFOs and stuff on, envelopes on board. So yes, it is a very powerful, all analog with digital control pedal. So yeah, that's all analog signal path, using these interesting sounding resonant filters, kind of very popular from synths in the early days of analog synthesis for, yeah, kind of squelchy resonant filters, which are quite fun. So you can do effects like Univibe and Auto Wah and stuff with it as well, and obviously things like tremolo. Why do I like them as a pair with Beebo? Because I quite, obviously we've got the new amp stuff and things like that, which is great. But for your average clippy type of tones, I find that they're, quite nice from actual silicon or germanium or Schottky diodes and stuff like that, or LEDs. They give quite a lot of nice versatility very easily. So it's quite a flexible way of getting gain. You can get lots of gain, and it's pretty straightforward. And it's got presets and things like that. So I like it because it's a nice complement of all the digital stuff you could want for me, and then all the analog gainy stuff you could want. So that's why I think they're a good pair. So yes, thank you, Splatter, for the question. Yeah, they're a good matchy match. So yes, stereo reverbs, just like the mono reverbs, but let's show one anyway because I like it so much. So we'll just show one quickly. We're actually changing all the interface for the reverbs, all the IR stuff at the moment, because we're going to make it look a bit more like the cab interface, sorry, the amp interface, because the amp interface is new and pretty, and you come up with ideas and then you're like, oh, okay, we need that everywhere because it's nicer. So if you're out your reverb like this, you haven't chosen an IR, so you won't hear anything. So you need to choose an IR. Real space is pretty amazing. So Studio B is Studio B in Nashville. This is a cave in the tropical part of Queensland where I am originally from, but escaped. The Shepherd's Bush Empire. There's some random different venues. What's the Knights Hall in Malta sound like? So if we strum that now, we're not running any dry, so we just get the reverb. So the next step is to run some dry. You could run this into a wet dry if you wanted to have nice control over both levels, which I thoroughly recommend. But now, there you go. There's the, you can hear the wet and the dry on our stereo reverb. And Yes, IRs. So that's actually a real space in Malta. And, you know, sounds very pretty. So thoroughly enjoy those. And what am I doing next? I'll clear that. Oh, I could have kept that reverb actually. And, well, we only have 2 left in S. So the next one up is Strum, which I have shown a little bit recently anyway. That's one of the new modules, so that's why I've shown it recently. But you'll, well, you know, it should be in the collection as well. Strum. Strum's a controller. It puts out notes and stuff. It's for strumming notes. You might try it with the macro oscillator and the multi-resonator. No, multi-resonator, there we go. And given that we've just been talking about reverbs, I'll add one of them as well, because why not? Actually, yeah, I will also put my guitar down because we're going to use the strumming, and 2 hands would be useful. And we'll add a wet dry stereo at the end, so I can keep my levels in some kind of vague, sensible way. So let's run our that wet, and then we'll run that out to 1 and 3. He says with confidence, 1 and 3. There we go. And then try a little bit of each of these ones. So I'm going to put the gate into Strum, and the Strum from Strum into Strum. The input of that one is called Strum, and the module is called Strum. And we'll put the volt per octave output from Strum into the pitch. They're kind of chaotically called either. Input of the multi-resonator. We've turned this guy down, so we won't deafen ourselves. And we'll connect both of those to there, and then we'll just run that in mono to there. Try R. So yes, there we go. That one's just running in mono, and the reverb is in stereo. And now we can go blunk. We also need to choose a reverb. Let's choose something somewhat epic. This one called Coburg Workshop is actually the space I'm in right now, and there's a video of us recording this space, because you can capture things very easily and put them in the pedal yourself, which is always fun. So let's just turn down this main level out a little bit in case we're too plonky. And that's kind of fun with a bit of reverb, actually, isn't it? Reverb makes everything better. So you've got some controls here on the multi-resonator. You've seen these ones before, because, you know, we've shown that lots of times. Strum is what we're here for. I'll just keep level down a little bit so I can talk over the top of that. Says with confidence. Maybe all the way down to there. Yep. So the way you use Strum is you've got 4 octaves of whichever chord you have selected, and you can just go and strum through them. So you'll see we're in a major chord at the moment. You can multi-touch like that. So I'm now in A minor. Or I can go and strum through that. If we're in the... So we've got 3 notes here. So we've got the root, the minor third and the 5th. If we jump into the 7th, if we jump into minor 7th, you see we've got lots more notes because we've got the 7th in there as well. And if we go Dom 7th, and this one will go up and down by octaves. Up, up, up to the sky. So yeah, that's Strum. You can strum with a variety of stuff. So yeah. So yeah, it's just a very different way to control any of your synthesizers or any of the built-in synths. Because yeah, it's that kind of chordal, strummy playing, which is sometimes, fun. What have we got left in S? I think we're at the very last one. We do, and the last one is a bit dull, but it is occasionally useful. The last one in S is sum. So it's just another one of the maths modules. You can add 2 signals together. It works like all the other maths modules in that it's got 2 CV inputs, and they are added onto these 2 control inputs. So you've got your 2 continuously variable ones and your 2 ones. So these 2 are added together, and the 2 CVs are originally added to these. So actually there's 4 adds. But that's just the same way all the other modules work. How is this useful, you may ask? Well, if you want to shift any of your CVs up or up, you can sum them with something. You want to change the octave your stuff is coming in, maybe you can shift it up and then quantize it or something like that. Shifting notes is a bit fiddly with it though, truthfully. So it's more useful for shifting CV values around. It can also be handy if you want to bind something to something. So say we want to control something in here. Like, for instance, this brightness one. So we need to turn brightness mod up a bit in here for it to do anything. Now this one, now when we control this one, it will change brightness because it'll be modifying the brightness. This one is now going to be modifying brightness. Well, why is that useful? Because if you've got any of the modules that have CV controls that you want to control directly from MIDI, you can do that. Because maybe you want to MIDI learn this guy, and you just hit MIDI there, and you can learn it. You can then run this sum into the friendly slew limiter we talked about earlier, and then run it into the multi-resonator. That means that if you're controlling this sum from a knob on a MIDI controller, it will be then smoothed with the slew limiter before going into the multi-resonator. So sometimes you want to do stuff like that, because instead of binding it directly, you might want to make it, you might press a pad on your MIDI controller and it goes straight from 0 to fully on, but you want it to slowly fade up or something. You can do that by binding instead into the sum module, just a basic add this on to the thing, and then running that into a slew limiter. So that's a way to control, combine two of the modules that we've used today in S. And that brings us to the end of S. So next week we will be doing T. And there aren't very many letters left. So if, as always, you have any questions, feel free to ask them now. Otherwise, we will be gone until next week, hopefully, when we have new exciting things to show. So, thank you as always for watching the live stream. And yeah, we'll continue. Oh yes, and you'll notice that the live streams now have up-to-date chapter information, which I will continue to attempt to keep updated. All the ones up to this one have current chapter information, so you can easily jump to any of the modules. If there's one you're thinking about, you can jump to them. So yes. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and we will see you all next week.